Hey guys, welcome to this explainer on the Canadian Electrical Code 2024, specifically focusing on Section 14. Go ahead and grab your code books, because today we're going to study together just like a journey person training a first-year apprentice for the Red Seal exam. I'll be your master electrician for this session, and we're going to take all that dense, technical language of the CEC and translate it into practical job site reality. We've got a really solid game plan for today. We're going to breeze right through site safety, basic switch mounting, and managing multiple voltage sources. By the time we're done here, you are going to be completely job site ready and totally prepped to tackle Section 14 on your Red Seal. All right, before we get into the weeds, you gotta remember the absolute golden rule of Section 14. We want to prevent arc flashes and deadly shocks, right? So we have to ensure control devices safely interrupt loads, making the equipment completely dead when open. Out in the field, we literally just call this the dead when open rule. It's exactly what keeps a service electrician who comes in after you safe. This isn't just some theory for a test. This is literally what gets you home to your family at the end of a shift. Okay, let's jump right into the core requirements for control devices and disconnects, which covers rules 14-400 all the way through 14-416. So, let's talk fundamentals. Rule 14404 is pretty much your best friend out on the job. It says control devices always go ahead of your overcurrent devices. Why? Well, because you definitely don't want to be changing out hot fuses. Rule 14402 backs this right up by requiring disconnects for fused circuits. There are a few super specific exceptions, like switchboard instrument circuits at 250 volts or less, and voltage transformer primaries 750 volts or less. And when you're actually installing them, rules 14408 and 410 mean you can't leave the next electrician guessing. They absolutely must clearly indicate on or off and have their current-carrying parts safely enclosed in metal or fire-resisting material. Now picture this on a job site. You walk up to a piece of equipment and it's supplied by two totally different transformers. How do you make that safe? Well, Rule 14414 gives you two main options. Option A is just using a single master disconnecting means that isolates all the ungrounded conductors. Easy enough. Option B lets you group individual disconnects for each supply circuit together. But listen, examiners love to test option B. If you choose to group those individual disconnects, you absolutely must have warning signs demanding that all of them be opened to ensure complete de-energization. You really don't want someone pulling just one lever, thinking they're safe, and then getting a massive shock from a secondary control circuit. Right. Moving along to switch rules and ratings. The code book is, frankly, obsessed with making sure a switch actually turns off the power, and more importantly, stays off. Listen, gravity is kind of your worst enemy on a construction site. Rule 14502 is entirely dedicated to fighting it. A single thrown knife switch must always be mounted vertically. That way, if the handle slips or gets bumped, gravity pulls it safely open, breaking the circuit. It can never fall closed into a live circuit. Now, for double throw knife switches, the throw can be vertical or horizontal. But if you do mount a double throw switch vertically, you have to provide what the code calls a positive locking device or stop. That ensures the blades actually stay locked in that open, center position. Keep an eye out for those exact words on your exam. Let's map out how different switches handle different loads under rules 14-508 and 510. You'll definitely need these multipliers for your test. Notice how an AC-DC switch handling an inductive load needs an ampere rating of twice the load. Why is that? Well, because breaking direct current creates a massive sustained arc compared to alternating current, which naturally crosses 0 volts. But if you look at an AC-only switch under 14510, it just needs to match the ampere rating of the inductive load as long as the power factor lag is at least 75%. Also, take a look at how tungsten loads are treated. Because cold tungsten filaments have a huge inrush current, switches usually need a specific T rating to handle it. Okay, let's knock out a few specific switch rules that examiners love to use as traps. Pay really close attention to 14512 for 347-volt switches. If you do commercial lighting here in Canada, you see these literally every single day. The code says they need a minimum 15-amp rating, absolutely no tungsten loads, and they cannot be interchangeable with your standard 120 or 277-volt switches. Finally, under 14514, if you're dealing with switches in circuits exceeding 300 volts to ground, like those 347-volt commercial lighting switches we just talked about, they cannot be grouped or ganged in the same enclosure unless you have permanently installed barriers. So let's shift gears a bit to field tips and exam traps. We're going to look at the tricky wording the Red Seal exam uses to try and trip up apprentices. Here's a classic exam trap for you. Rule 14406 states that control devices must be readily accessible. Now, an exam question will paint this vivid picture of a massive contactor mounted 30 feet in the air on an industrial ceiling and ask if it's a code violation. Your gut instinct might be to say, yeah, it's a violation because you need a scissor lift just to reach the thing. But sub-rule 2 is the catch. Remotely controlled devices are considered readily accessible as long as the means of controlling them are readily accessible. So if the push-button station down on the factory floor is readily accessible, you are perfectly code compliant. Don't fall for that one. And that brings us to another favorite exam topic, the isolating switch. Under Rule 14-400, this is literally the only control device not required to safely establish and interrupt loads. Always remember that isolating switches are not designed to break current under load. If you open an isolating switch while a motor is running under full load, you risk pulling a massive, dangerous arc that could just blow up right in your face. They are strictly for locking out equipment safely, creating a visible break in the circuit after the main breaker or contactor has already stopped the current flow. All right, let's put your code navigation to the test with a couple of classic Red Seal practice scenarios based on what we've just covered. Here's question 1. You're installing a canopy switch to control a tungsten filament lamp load using an AC/DC switch that is not T-rated. What must the ampere rating of the switch be? Read that really carefully. I recommend taking a quick pause right here to find Rule 14-508 sub-rule C in your codebook before we reveal the answer. Got it? The correct answer is at least 3 times the ampere rating of the load. Because tungsten has such a massive inrush current when filament is cold, it honestly acts almost like a short circuit for a tiny fraction of a second. If that canopy switch isn't specifically T-rated for tungsten, it needs a rating 3 times the load just to survive that initial power spike without completely welding its contacts together. Okay, question 2. A journey person mounts a double-throw knife switch vertically on a wall. According to Rule 14-502, what must be provided? Think back to our chat about the electrician's enemy, gravity, and what happens if a double-throw switch slips out of that center open position. Yup, the answer is a positive stop or locking device. Because without a positive stop, gravity could easily pull that double-throw switch down right into the bottom contacts, unintentionally energizing a circuit that you were treating as completely safely dead.
We're wrapping up here, so let's hit your exam cheat sheet for Section 14 to really lock these critical numbers into your memory.
If you're studying for your Red Seal right now, definitely pause and take note of these. These specific voltage, amperage, and multiplier thresholds are basically guaranteed to show up in your multiple choice questions. Remember 250 volts for omitting disconnects on switchboard instrument circuits. Keep 150 volts to ground max in mind for the control circuit barrier exception. Remember 2 times the load for AC/DC inductive switches, that 15 amp minimum for 347 volt switches, and of course, that strictly enforced 300 volts to ground threshold that dictates when you absolutely must install permanent barriers between grouped switches. So let's get to today's Red Seal takeaway. Here are your top 3 points to remember. Number 1, always mount single-throw knife switches vertically so gravity cannot close them. Number 2, control devices always go ahead of overcurrent devices so your fuses are dead when the switch is open. And number 3, AC/DC switches require much higher ratings, like double for inductive and triple for non-T-rated tungsten canopy switches, compared to your standard AC switches. Keep these in mind and you'll navigate Section 14 with total ease. But here's a question to leave you with. If you walked onto a site tomorrow and saw a 347-volt switch and a 120-volt switch grouped in the exact same box without a barrier, would you know exactly which rule to quote to the inspector? Think about it. Thanks for studying with me. If you found this lesson helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment with the next CEC topic you'd like to learn. Keep studying, stay safe, and good luck on your Red Seal journey.